Okay, and here's the beach shot that we did, which turned out to be one of the final shots from the movie. And we just slowed it down. We're going to slow down all these shots here in this particular segment so that we can kind of concentrate on the framing and the composition. And in order for us to do this shot, we literally had to run to the beach like mad maniacs to get to the part where you could see the water. There was, I don't know, maybe a quarter of a mile for us to run to get there before the sun completely set. Wonderful LA traffic. We got stuck in traffic. We couldn't get to the beach in time. Almost lost the sun, but we got there in just that magical time. And the reason I'm showing you all of the raw footage here is because I wanted to show you just how fast you have to act sometimes to get a shot. Because I lost this light. This was the last shot I could get like that. We got this kind of a cheesy shot, Brady Bunch kind of shot right here. And just to kind of show you two different methods of going about doing that. There's the cheesy shot was before, and here's another shot that's a little bit better. You want to kind of try to avoid those shots where the people part hands unless you're going for something more cliche or more period dated. But this light right here that I had at 6 decibels gain was gone within about 5 minutes. So if we hadn't run to the beach as fast as we did, and if we hadn't gotten that shot right at that moment, we would have lost it. Now these shots, the silhouette shots, were around for a little bit longer than that because obviously we had more exposure from the sun. So we were able to play with them a little bit more and just have more fun with those. But I can't tell you just how you just have to be prepared sometimes. You have to know your settings, your camera settings, everything has to be ready. I was actually adjusting the white balance as I was running to the beach and making sure that the decibels gain was correct, everything was ready to go. And that's the only reason I was able to get some of these shots. And just quickness sometimes is the most important thing. And there's the shot where she's pointing towards the Ferris wheel and she wants to go there. It's very important to shoot these shots sometimes because if I hadn't gotten the shot, I couldn't have established the fact that they were going to appear to that pier where the Ferris wheel was and kind of establish that location, that it's not inland somewhere, but it's actually on the beach. It's a nice romantic setting for them to kind of develop their relationship. Here's a shot where I did a circular kind of handheld move around them. And as you can see, I mean, if you're just really kind of careful with the camera, you can get some pretty decent shots even just handheld. However, what a Steadicam would do in this situation is would take out all this bobbing up and down that you're seeing in the shot and would make it perfectly seamless, like you had a dolly around them. Here's another shot where they walk into the scene and into the setting sun, of course, just a kind of nice romantic shot. And essentially I had them start on both sides of the frame, and they just kind of walked in and, assembled kind of inside the frame. And there's the wide shot that we got, and then within the wide shot, after I felt like I'd gotten enough of that wide shot, just a couple of seconds to establish the location, I immediately zoomed in and got a medium shot. And again, the medium shot is always going to be your more personal approach to any storytelling when it comes to independent filmmaking. And even though in this situation they're walking away from the camera rather than walking towards the camera, it is still a nice element. It's a very nicely composed medium shot that works really well. And the reason being is that, as opposed to this wide shot right here, the reason being is that you're concentrating on the location. The location is so dramatic that the drama between the two actors can borrow from the location. You'll see in the next scene, I encourage you to, for instance, when they're walking up the stairway, to only shoot, primarily concentrate on shooting where the actors are coming towards the camera and the action is being brought towards the camera. But in this situation where you have a very dramatic location that adds to the story, the performance can borrow from that location by shooting a silhouette, for instance, where they're walking away from the camera and into the setting sun or into the beach type area, because they can borrow dramatically from that location. So don't forget also, when they're walking into the distance, they're walking along the z-axis that we've already discussed. So they're diminishing in their size as they go off into the distance, which kind of makes like they're kind of getting smaller and smaller in the frame and further away from us as the audience. And that kind of has a psychological impact, like maybe it's wrapping up a story as they're walking into the distance. The decision is always creative, and it's always yours to shoot both also. I mean, I always encourage you to shoot both sides. Always shoot the wide shot, the medium shot, and the reverse angle from the other side. But if you don't have it, like in this situation, show you what would look like at 18 decibels gain, is a very unacceptable frame. I mean, we couldn't shoot anymore at this point. This is me doing like a circular handheld move around them, but that's what we, if we had at that point wanted to get a reverse angle of them walking into the sun, it was too late. Even at 18 decibels gain, you couldn't get enough light on there. And if we had used any kind of battery-operated lights at that point, it wouldn't get sold. We would have to use a very, very large, soft source to make it feel like it's the setting sun at that point, because any kind of a small light source is not going to look like the sun that had already set below the horizon. So there was just no point in using it. Okay, and here's one of the really fun things we got to do, and we're going to use this section to really illustrate battery-operated lights and their usefulness on the set. We're just going to go over kind of step by step how we accomplished everything in the white balance and the battery-operated lights that we used throughout this section. Outside, there was some sodium vapor lights. Sodium vapor lights are kind of greenish and yellowish in tint, and they burn at a much lower color temperature than daylight, which is where we had our camera still preset from earlier when we were shooting the sunset. So we had to change it over to a different white balance. But before we did that, what we wanted to explore is a different gain setting. Now we have about 6 decibels of gain on there right now, which is increasing as you can see the graininess. But we're going to go to a higher gain, which is now 18 decibels right there. As you can see, the grain is incredibly large. It is an unacceptable frame. We cannot shoot at this kind of a gain level. So if we wanted to walk on the set and just try to shoot with available light and still get, some kind of an exposure on the frame, this is what we would end up having at 18 decibels gain. The lights and the skin tones are proper, but it's just way too grainy. So we have to switch back down to 6 decibels of gain, which is acceptable for the camera that we're using. And then what we had to do is add illumination. But before we did that, we went ahead and got the correct white balance. So at the correct white balance, we're going to see it here in just a moment. It's going to be closer to 3200 degrees Kelvin, which is more like, tungsten color temperature, which is closer to sodium vapors. And here we are changing it. Now, because you've been looking at the other frame, which had a lot of orange in it, this is going to seem kind of bluish. And it's true, there's a mixture of lights in there. There's also a mercury vapor light off to the left side there, and in combination with the sodium vapor. But it's still a better, more acceptable white balance than the orange-looking frame we were at before. So we put an orange tungsten conversion gel into the light panel that we had, which is daylight balance, to convert it to be closer to the sodium vapor lights. And as you can see here, as they walk up the stairs, there's a light coming at them from the left side that wasn't there before. And here it comes. You can see on the left side of their body as they walk up, and also on the stairway, there's a shadow. It's actually moving because one of the guys is holding the light panel. See the light on the left side of her coat? That wasn't there before. There was no light there before. We actually added that light. So really, if you were shooting just with available light, you would end up with that extremely horrendous frame that we saw earlier before, which was 18 decibels gain. You would have no light. You wouldn't see your actors. You really need to always add some kind of lighting to these nighttime situations, even if it's just one light panel like we did before. So this is the frame before. As you can see, it's not enough light to shoot with. But once you add the light panel or any kind of battery operated light, this is what you end up with. You end up with a frame that you can shoot, you can use, and will actually look acceptable. I mean, obviously you can do a lot more with more lights, but if you just have one light, that's what you can do. And here they are walking up the stairway in slow motion, so you can really see the shadow. The light is coming from the bottom left hand side of the frame, which is where the guy is standing right now with one of our battery operated lights. And here it is from the other angle, from the other side. Now obviously at that point, once we switch to the top of the stairway, you don't want to have that light down at the bottom of the stairway anymore, because you have to illuminate the side that the camera is seeing. So we brought up the guy with the light panel up to the top right hand side, and you'll see that as they get closer and closer to the light gets brighter and brighter on their faces because they're coming closer to this light right here. And if you did not have this light up here at this moment, all you would have is just this orange light coming from above. And as you can see the shadows underneath his eyes right now, that's all you would see. You would not have any light on her face, any light on his face at all, to be able to see their faces, their action, their performance at all at this point. You want to get it done for very little money. You don't want to set up lights with stands. The least you want to do is have one person or a light stand standing there with one of these battery operated lights to kind of fill in the frame. Because it just makes it acceptable, at least. So you can just at least see the performance. Otherwise, you have nothing. You don't have any exposure at all. And here they are walking up the stairway again. And the reason that we are going to look at them walking up the stairway again was going to talk a little bit about aesthetics. And as you can see, when they're walking up the stairway, it's kind of an impersonal type of frame. They're walking away from the camera, away from the audience. Whereas in this frame, when they're walking towards the camera, it's always going to be a lot more of a personal type of shot. You want to try to always bring the action to the camera. If there are people who are speaking, communicating, having a conversation in any way, you don't want to have them walking away from the camera too much because it kind of separates the audience from your performers. As you can see again here, you just see their backs, and every once in a while he looks over to see her. And even if this was a close-up, it would still not be as personal as a wide shot where you can see their faces and they're coming towards the camera. The audience always wants to feel like they're onlookers onto these people's lives, and the best way to feel like they're kind of peeking in is to always make the action come to them. Okay, and here's another shot. This is kind of an establishing wide shot that we took so we can kind of show where they're walking towards. You can see that it's a pier. You can see a set of lights all the way into the distance. You can see at the end there's some kind of a restaurant maybe, and some shops on either side. As an establishing wide shot, you don't want to keep it on the screen for very long, or you want to dolly in behind these people to show this frame. Obviously, we did not have a dolly, and so we wanted to just kind of get an establishing shot. We got the establishing shot, but immediately you're going to lose a sense of the performance and lose a sense of the story if you stay on the wide shot for very long. What you want to do at this point is kind of zoom in, as we did here in a moment we'll show you, and really kind of get in there and get a medium shot of the action. And you can see the DP, he had a focus back here, and when he zooms in, he's out of focus. And why is it that on the wide shot it looked like it was in focus, but when you zoom in, it's out of focus? The reason being is that wide-angle lenses are much more forgiving of focus than are when you zoom into a telephoto type of lens. This is a zoom lens, obviously. It's a combination of a wide-angle and a normal lens and a telephoto lens all in one. But when you're all the way out on the widest setting of the wide-angle lens, you're going to be, the camera's going to forgive a lot more on the focus than when you're zoomed in into a telephoto, which is this medium shot right here. When you zoom in, you have to be really spot on with your focus, especially in HD, because you can really tell when you're not in focus properly. The easiest way to focus a zoom lens, even on the wide angle setting, is to zoom in, get a focus, zoom back out, and you know for a fact that you're in focus at that point. Okay, so back to the medium shot. Let's talk aesthetics a little bit. Why is it that this medium shot feels just a lot more rich than the wide shot did? Even though the wide shot could kind of tell you better the situation and the circumstance and where they're at, the medium shot is just so much more personal. Well, the one thing is that the string of lights up in the top kind of leads your eye into the distance. There is a bright focal point in the distance, which is that little kind of shop on wheels there. And also, the performers are larger in the frame than they were back in the wide shot. So you've got a lot of things working for this frame that was not working for the wide shot. I mean, we actually scrapped the wide shot entirely. We didn't use it at all because the medium shot was just so much more personal, and that's really all we wanted. You'll find that on these independent productions, the best way to kind of bail yourself out of not having a large crew and a large set that you paid for that you're allowed to use is to concentrate on medium shots and close-ups, because a wide shot is going to get you that location. You're going to get a sense of location, but if you're not able to move that wide shot, if you're not able to kind of keep up with the performers in some way, either by using a steady camera or a dolly shot, you really are not going to end up using it for more than a few seconds and then immediately switch to the medium shot. I would concentrate most of my effort on the medium shots rather than on the wide shots when it comes to exteriors that you're not in control of. And this is, of course, speaking of independent films that are primarily concentrating on dramatic situations between people and small stories and dramas, rather than showing the large expanse of a natural setting or a beach or something of that nature. This is, when you're concentrating on stories, you want to concentrate on the performers. The setting can be there just for a few seconds, just to put you in that frame of mind, to put you in the in that where the performers are. You take the wide shot, let it be on the screen for a few seconds, but most of the lighting that you're going to do, filling in of the shadows and also working with the performers, is going to happen on the medium shots and the close-ups. That's where you really, in fact, if I were you, I would shoot the medium shot first and the close-up, and then if you have time and if the police officers are kicking you out of the location. Then you go back and get the wide shot, but that's definitely secondary when it comes to independent productions to the medium shot. Get the medium shot first, then go back and get the wide shot. When you're back in interiors, you want to concentrate on wide shots because you're in control of the environment. You can change the decor, you can change the positions of the furniture, the positions of the actors and the blocking. That's where you want to really practice your wide shots. But on the exteriors, you want to kind of stick with the medium shots as much as you can. That's going to be the more personal approach. So here we are in front of the Ferris wheel, and we're preparing here. Eventually, here in just a moment, we're going to put up a light panel, another battery-operated light, to fill in the shadows. As you can see, they're kind of dark right now, and we're just waiting for some people who are milling about to kind of stop looking at us and stop bothering us so that we can start filming. And that's just one of the things that you have to deal with sometimes. There's going to be people on the set who are going to try to bother you and try to kind of interfere in your filming, and eventually they'll go away and you can start filming. Just don't give up your shot. Here we are right here adjusting the camera. This is all handheld, so we're kind of trying to get the right perspective. And in just a moment here, you're going to see the light panel come up and fill in the actors' faces. Now, so after you've gotten used to the idea of what it looks like without light, here, this is the DP going back down to 0 decibels of gain, and we're going to go ahead and add some light here from the light panel, so you can see the light kind of coming in and filling in her back and his face, and bringing up the level of illumination a little bit more. And then here in just a moment, the DP is going to go back up to 6 decibels of gain. He was trying to see if he can kind of do the shot without gain, and it was just impossible. There just wasn't enough illumination. So here he is going back up to 6 decibels of gain. But on this camera, 6 decibels is acceptable. And so 6 decibels of gain with the light panel gave us an acceptable frame that we could work with, and we could see the actors' faces in the performance. And here it is again with 6 decibels of gain, and again without. Okay, and just to kind of really drive the point home, we're going to go ahead and turn off here in just a moment the battery-operated light and leave it at 6 decibels of gain, just so you can see what the frame would look like if you had actually arrived on the set and you did not want to do any lighting but just use 6 decibels of gain. And here we are turning it off, and this is a freeze frame of the shot with 6 decibels of gain and with no light panel in the shot. As you can see, his face is really dark, her face is dark, you really can't see very much, and you really wouldn't even notice that the light panel was there when you're watching the movie. It's only because it's being turned on and off right now that you notice that there's another light there lighting the shot. You could do a lot more elaborate lighting if you had money, if you had a crew, if you had a generator, but you don't really need to. I mean, if you just have a small battery-operated light, you just make it soft so it doesn't create any new shadows, and you just light your actors. And we went ahead and zoomed in to get a close-up. And on the close-up, primarily we're going to discuss here is aesthetics. So this is a decent shot. It's okay. There's nothing really wrong with the shot, but it could be better. And here's how. Just by blocking, by just moving the actors a little bit further to the right. We just asked them to move a little bit further to the right side of the frame so that the Ferris wheel in the background fills the frame, and you kind of get a more sense of place. It's a much more pleasing shot. There's a lot of contrast between them and the Ferris wheel. They're more separated from the background, and it's also just a prettier shot altogether because of all the colors of the lights. They're filled in. They have the light panel on them to fill them in, so it's a nice, more balanced shot. You really want to try to take care of your close-ups as much as possible, especially on these independent productions, because the close-up allows you to craft the frame a lot more easily than a wide shot. And you really need that. With the performers, you allow them, with the close-up, an opportunity to occupy a much larger portion of the frame that the audience is seeing. And you always want to tell them, listen, I've got you on a close-up. Here's your range of movement. It's just from the top of your head down to your shoulders. And you have to contain your performance within those limits. And a good actor will contain their performance within those limits. They won't move their arms and flail them about, when they know that the camera is not going to see it. And here's the last shot that we did for that particular scene or that setting. And you can see on the top right-hand corner, there's a little battery-operated light. And so you saw the scene earlier when we showed it to you at the beginning of this segment of the teaching tool. And we told you that there was a light there on their faces, that there was no natural illumination in the frame there. But until you kind of see where the light is, you really don't get a sense of the fact that, wow, without this light being there, you're really not going to see very much in that frame. It's going to just be some really, really deep set shadows in their faces. You need to have some kind of light in the frame there. If you don't have a light panel, if you can afford it, There's other smaller compact lights that you can use to achieve the same result. Just make sure to diffuse it. Make sure that it's make it into a larger, softer source. And the more you soften it, the less of a shadow it's going to cast, and the more pleasing are the results. And always make sure to match the color temperature with whichever color temperature that you're using, and the light will just seem like it's part of the environment at that point. Okay, so here's another fun shoot we got to do. We got to do the one with the bowling alley, and this is another one of those scenes where we had an opportunity to go into this bowling alley and do this one shot, and the bowling alley managers were very, very nice and just allowed us to kind of just be there without paying a great deal of money to be there. And again, that's one of those wonderful niceties of fate where you just find the right people, the right place at the right time, and they just allow you to go ahead and use their facility, just like with the restaurant. And again, this was a privilege and not a right. We went in there, we were very respectful. We only set up a couple of little battery-operated lights. As you can see, our DP here setting up the one that's attached to the stand, and eventually he'll set up one attached to one of the little bowling machines right here. And he just set up a couple of those. We had the camera handheld, and I was operating the camera because our DP was also acting in the frame. So, you know, it's just like I said before, everybody eventually in your family, your friends, and everybody who's working with you as crew on the set is eventually somehow going to end up in the movie somewhere. So, you know, you want to kind of prepare them for that. And so here he is setting the light panel up on this adjustable arm, and he's locking it in, and he's turning on the light, and that's the light that's going to end up lighting him and his girlfriend as he's sitting back in the back there on the seats. And there's Jake and Rachel, and Jake's going to be the one, of course, doing the bowling, as you saw in the movie. There's a little bit of also kind of like a lighting test to show you guys, to prove to you that you cannot walk into a situation like this and not use some kind of lighting. Here's the light panel on at full blast, lighting up Rachel and Jake right there. And we're going to dim it all the way down, just to kind of show you what it would look like without lighting there on the set right now. That's another one of those strokes of fate where, unfortunately, the bowling alley, when we had scouted it before, had, at that same time, had all of their lights on. But when we actually came in to shoot, it was league night, and we didn't know that. And they had all these black lights everywhere, and you couldn't see anything in the entire bowling alley unless we used some kind of lighting. So we popped out our two battery-operated lights, and there's the two frames that you would end up with the difference. I mean, you can either have that, where you can see their faces, or that. Even at full 12 decibels gain, there's no illumination on their faces enough to me to get an acceptable image out of this. And you can see that you can see less of the room too, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. We do want the audience to concentrate on the performers. So here's take one. This is our first take, which is kind of a rehearsal take. You can see that the framing is off, the lighting isn't very flattering, and we're kind of learning the location and learning the blocking. Even though we went over the blocking earlier, before we left the apartment. Okay, and that's where the bowl's going to go, and up to you again. It's still, I mean, you once you arrive on location, you think you're going to get it the first time. It never happens that way. We had to do 12 takes to get one action that we were happy with, primarily because of the blocking. You know, there's certain things that work, there's certain things that don't work, and you don't really know until you actually get to that location and try it. That's when the first thing we did is we switched to more of a position where we could see more of Jake's face. Instead of him bowling away from the camera, he's bowling towards the camera now instead, and we can see more of him. We also tried some close-ups like this at eye level, and we weren't very happy with what we were getting. We were also losing focus a lot, and Jake was, you know, kind of moving in large in large movements, and therefore we had to widen the frame eventually. This kind of felt cheesy. I mean, you know, even when I look at it right now, it just feels cheesy. You know, it's one of those takes you just throw away. But in this case, you know, we can use it to show you how to get a better movie done. Here's what we ended up going with. We ended up going with a lower angle, shooting up into the ceiling pretty much, with Jake bowling towards the camera. And eventually I got the camera movement down. It took me a few takes to really get where Jake's moving and where he's going to eventually settle in, and also to work on the blocking with him and Rachel and where he's going to hug her and how far down he's going to duck every single time. And the performer, in this case Jake, has to keep all these things in his mind and also stay in character while he's doing this whole thing. So by far, I think that, personally, actors have one of the hardest jobs on the set because we all get to be who we are as directors and DPs and grips and electrics, whereas they have to always be somebody else, but at the same time think with a conscious mind of how to perform their actions. So eventually, we got to just the right blocking, and we got that whole move down to where you see the DP who's, I guess, playing Jake's friend, Jake and Rachel's friend there, and his girlfriend, and they're kind of telling him to go on, actually bowl it, and kind of don't hesitate. And we also changed the lighting a little bit, and as you can see here, the lighting is a lot more dramatic now. There's more shadowing underneath his chin. We kind of defined Jake's face a little bit more. And here's where we were at before. We were at this, which just kind of like doesn't really, look at the difference. I mean, it's not even close. All we did essentially is just move the light panel further down the line, further to the right and away from Jake, so that he is more modeled by the light. And then when he gets up, it's still nice. You can still see her face. Everything's great. It's just a more cinematic lighting, and it's a more of a cinematic type of approach to the blocking too. And we told the actors to all slow down their beats a little bit, which means to take more time, to not bowl so fast and to not turn around so fast and not hug so fast. To just kind of take their time a little bit more. And once we got that, this is take 6 right now, and the best take ended up being the one right after this, because that's the one where I approached David, the actor, and I said, Jake at this point is feeling very shy and vulnerable, and you want to kind of withdraw a little bit, let her come to you. Instead of take 6, he kind of made the first move and gave her a hug. I said, let her come to you and give you the hug as a consolation for, bowling a really, really lousy game. Don't come to her. Be the shy person. Be withdrawn. Let her kind of sneak you out of your shell there. And see, you can see that it really made an effect on him. He was more withdrawn in this one. He's less confident, which is how I wanted him to portray Jake at this point. And he's not happy with his performance. He kind of turns around here in just a moment, and he finds her just standing right there. And he smiles, but he doesn't make a move. She comes over and hugs him. Then he hugs her in return. He doesn't push her away or anything. And he keeps kind of looking down because he cannot maintain eye contact with her. And it just worked out. That ended up being the best take. Then we did one last take to kind of show you guys where all everybody's positions are before we got started. And you can see there's the DP and his girlfriend, and there's Rachel, and there's Jake. So after we got done with the master shots, we went and got close-ups of all the individual bits of action. And as you can see, we stayed on the correct eye line. We stayed on everybody's right side, which is the camera's left side. And we didn't cross the line over to the other side to get any different perspectives, which wouldn't have cut. So we got the close-up of Rachel and Jake hugging, just one close-up of just that action. So we got 8 master shots, and we were happy with number 7. And then we got all the different individual close-ups of the action, and that gave us enough so that we can come back and post and cut a nice sequence. If we had just had the master shots, we cannot go back and post and change the pacing of or the flow of the action. We're just kind of stuck with the master shot exactly as it is. But with all these little close-ups that we ended up getting, that's what ended up allowing us to cut a more powerful sequence. And I encourage you, even when you're in a situation like when you walk in a bowling alley and they're just kind of letting you be there, and they're doing you a favor, and you know that they're doing you a favor, and you know that it's a privilege to be there, even after all that, go and get the close-ups, you got there, you're there, they're not going to kick you out, just make sure to get all your little close-ups. Get the master shot first, make sure you're happy with the performance, that's the most important thing, and then get the close-ups. Don't just let them go just because you think that, oh, well, I got everything that I need, in the master shot, and I don't really need to get the close-ups right now. I don't want to, kind of anger these people or annoy them. Get the close-ups, take maybe another 30 seconds, 60 seconds, beg if you have to. But stay there, get all your close-ups, make sure that you have those shots so that you can go back into editing and change the pace of the sequence, because otherwise you really don't have much. And if you didn't get the most incredible master shot ever, you're not going to be able to cut it into anything but what it was originally from the actual shoot.